Okay, good evening, everyone, and I'd wish you a warm welcome, but it's probably a cool one right now. I'm delighted to welcome you here to the Maison de la Paix, the House of Peace, and it's my privilege on behalf of GCSP to be your MC for this evening. My name's Fleur Hayworth, and I'm responsible for gender and inclusive security at the GCSP. So, unusually tonight, I'm going to ask you to take your phone, keep it by your side, switch it on, and put it on silent, and I'll be asking you to use it in just a moment. So tonight is the second in a series of launches for the Media and Arts for Peace online course that the GCSP has developed in collaboration with the United States Institute for Peace in Washington. The first launch was on the 25th of May in Washington, and the next one will be on the 3rd of October in New York. Now, the first people to mention are those that had the vision behind this course and who worked tirelessly for 2 years to research, produce, and put it together, and including this launch. The first mention must go to Hani al-Said. You'll be hearing her remarkable story in a moment, some insights from Ambassador Doucet about how this all came about and her personal story. But she worked alongside Dr Caty Clément, who's been a senior programme officer at the GCSP for 8 years, and she gave some really helpful academic insights into it. And we also had Dominic Kerali, who is at the USIP, and both, if you take the course, you will see what knowledge they can share. So on your seats, you'll find some information about the speakers. We have some wonderful speakers for you tonight and performers. Julie Allard and her team here at the GCSP have done a fantastic job in putting this all together, and they've worked tirelessly to make it a success. We started today with some theatre, with a rehearsal of a play that has gone around the world into over 32 countries and has been performed by politicians, MPs, Vice President. The person behind that play who produced it is Hedda Kraus-Strogren, and she is with us this evening, and she will be sharing some of her insights tonight. But the play encapsulates the 3 key messages that we have for this Media and Arts for Peace initiative, and they are creativity, storytelling, and strategy. If I could just give you a small insight into the deep dive that we took today. There were 7 women from 7 countries telling stories, and they were performed by actors from Geneva, including Ambassador Doucet, representatives from the IOM, UNHCR, Médecins Sans Frontières. I forget them all, but in Russia, we had the story of a woman who's protected women from domestic violence. In Cambodia, rescuing girls from human trafficking. In Guatemala, giving a voice to the poor. In Afghanistan, empowering rural women. In Nigeria and Pakistan, fighting for women's education and rights. And in Northern Ireland, promoting peace and equality. The playwrights and the people whose stories they told have all dedicated their lives to ensuring theirs and others' human rights. And the power in the room was quite touching for all. And we hope to be bringing it to Geneva in a more public performance soon. So I mentioned creativity, storytelling, and strategy, and we have a host of treats in store for you tonight. Start with creativity. It's that potential within all of us to think outside the box, create new and innovative ways to see the world, heal trauma, and build peace in an ever-convoluted, connected environment. Outside, you'll have seen the first part of that creativity, an art exhibition that was curated by Dr. Rama Mani, who you'll also be hearing from, as she travelled throughout the world collecting fieldwork for the University of Oxford's Centre for International Studies project. The essence of the project was to end mass atrocities, and each picture tells its own story, which I'm sure you'll be able to discover in the intermission if you haven't already. Second part of creativity we have is musical creativity, and it's our absolute honour and privilege to welcome the Damascus String Quartet, who form part of the Syrian Expat Philharmonic Orchestra, and they will be performing for you after the introductions this evening. Storytelling, that art form that began since humans began, to shape narratives, create a common identity, and build communities. We had 7 the play. We are next going to have a performance by the Theatre of Transformation Academy, also one of Dr. Ram Mani's founding projects. we'll be having students who've been working in the field and who are now studying human rights, performing a piece, telling their stories and the stories of those that they have worked with. And that brings me on to strategy. So why are we using the media and arts for peace, and how are we using them? To conclude the evening, GCSP fellow and journalist Xavier Colin will be inviting peace-building actors, academics such as Dr Caty Clément, cartoonists, playwrights and journalists to explore how the media can be so powerful, both as a positive force that can break cycles of violence and transform conflict to peace, as well as for destructive means. It's a conversation that we encourage you all to be a part of. So now, with purpose and participation in mind, I would like you all to take a moment to reflect on why you are here and the larger community that you form. In the run-up to the event, we've been asking our participants at GCSP and followers on social media, what does peace mean to you? We had a range of responses, including personal inner peace, as well as non-violence and community cohesion. You've been seeing some quotes on the screen which come from the course. But what's really interesting is that now social media has enabled us to create our own narratives and to build our own stories and communities beyond physical boundaries. Could I ask you to put your hands up if you're on Snapchat? Keep them up. Okay, young audience, I'm not in it. Okay. Instagram, you can keep the hands up. Okay, Twitter and Facebook. Okay, so is there anyone in the room that doesn't have the hands up? Not many, not many. So, in a moment, I will be asking you to share your story, either the fact that you're here. Ambassador Dusay is going to join me in a minute for our own personal tweet. And you can retweet that if you just want to say that you're a part of this journey with us. Or how you're feeling, and take the moment in the intermission. We have people following us on Facebook Live, both in the US and further afield, I'm sure. So let's bridge this community. This morning, Christopher Reardon from UNHCR performed the part of Mukhtar Mai from Pakistan. And he tweeted on the way to the GCSP, "I'm honoured and humbled to be playing this part." Mukhtar Mai responded, "Thank you for the compliment." We've already been bridging communities today, and let's continue. Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." So with that, I'd like to invite Ambassador Dusay up, and could we borrow a phone to do this tweet? One that doesn't need a passcode entering. Has anyone? Can I borrow a phone? Yeah, that would be brilliant. And then you can tweet. Okay, so here we go. First tweet of the evening. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome, Ambassador Dusay.
Thank you, Flan. Thank you very much, Flan. Welcome, good evening. It's a great pleasure and a privilege to have you all here. It's very warm outside, and thanks to Jacqueline up there, we have a very cold room here, and we are going to enjoy the evening. For the past 25 years, I've been an intelligence officer, a military officer, and a diplomat. And I have witnessed often and also personally experienced a lack of imagination in tackling international challenges, in dealing with multiple and complex issues, in managing unexpected events and black swans. And when I arrived here at GCSP 3 years ago, I decided to put an emphasis on creativity in all our activities. We want to foster in our participants creativity and collaboration. And this course is the result of this thinking. It's a process that we've started, and this is a concrete steps in the way toward increasing the creativity in our colleagues, in the people participating in our activities. And this is the moment where we combine new tools that we have developing innovative models. We combine the power of the arts, we combine the media in order to create something new. And we are here today thanks to the partnership we have with the United States Institute of Peace in Washington. This is a superb and impactful organization. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the president of USIP, Nancy Lindbergh, and also the director of the Global Academy, Dominic Kirali, and his team, Darin, and all the others. Now, I have also the duty and the pleasure to thank all the artists, all the performers, the writers, the cartoonists, all the musicians, the writers, who every day, worldwide, are contributing to promoting peace through their own means, and they are successful. They are impactful. And this is what we are going to do with this initiative. This initiative, Media and Art for Peace, is a way for us to combine both the media and the art in order to create something new and to amplify its impact. So what I would like to present now is just a short clip about a part of this new initiative. It's an online course that we have created with USIP. Should be a sound coming? Should be the sounds be coming? Can we try with the sound? They will come back. Thank you.
Want to ban music, they'll have to kill us first.
So the arts can be simply uplifting, and they can also take us through this ritual healing.
Let's begin.
So this is a short glimpse of what you can do from now on online. If you go on the platform of the Global Academy, either through the GCSP website or to see USIP website. And this is where we can use it as a trainer or for healing purposes, or using that in refugee camps in order to promote the interplay of the media and the art. And this project came about because 2 years ago, I met a Syrian refugee who was a national radio host, award-winning journalist in Syria, and who lost everything because of the war. She had to flee to the US. She is now a refugee in the US. And part of our work at GCSP, it is also to help people in transition. Could be a refugee, could be someone in transition from two different positions. And when I saw and discussed with her, I saw a huge potential that was not used because of her difficult situation being refugees out of her country. And so we decided to invest. We offer her to launch this project. And what you are going to see tonight also, it's part of the launch of this project. And it's also the result of having invested in one refugee. We hear every night on the news the plight of the refugees, but it's also our duty when we see potential and we can help some of them, that we do it. And so now I have the pleasure to introduce you via Skype in Washington. She's in Washington because I can tell you, to have someone as a refugee to travel through the world, leaving the US and entering Switzerland, it's a very long process. So she's about to arrive here in a few weeks, but now she's still in Washington, and say, Hani, good evening. Or good afternoon. We are very pleased to have you here, and please, you have the word.
Thank you very much. I'm going to put my earphones on in case I'm echoing. I don't know if I am, but just in case. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Lovely. Is everybody psyched up for the evening?
Yes.
Oh, that's a very weak yes, by the way. One more yes from everybody.
Yes.
Awesome. Now we're talking. I just want to say I'm really glad to be here, and thank you, Ambassador Doucet. I'm so humbled to be introduced by you today.
What a privilege and an honor to work side by side with your exceptional leadership and phenomenal team, I have to say. And these are not just words, they are the truth. And the GCSP has seen beyond my refugee status. It has believed in my potential. It has worked and continues to collaborate with me as a professional and has incubated my crazy ideas. And so I'm very thankful for that. By the way, I don't know if you've all noticed the running theme of wearing red today. I noticed Hedda was wearing red, Julie was wearing red, among others. I'm not sure why the men aren't wearing red, but it is a very energetic color, and it is very Swiss, and it's also a GCSP color, as is blue. And I have to say, I'm wearing blue jeans, and I can get away with that because I'm behind the screen, so I'm feeling comfortable today. Let's talk a little bit about media and arts for peace and what a great opportunity it was to help co-develop the Media and Arts for Peace online course, or what we call MAP, with GCSP and the United States Institute of Peace Global Campus. In the past 2 years, as you heard, that's really how long it has taken. And I have enjoyed working with and have learned much from both the GCSP and USIP team and team players, I have to say. It's been such an honor, and I am very grateful for your community support and for your trust. So here I am today, beyond status, borders, and bureaucracies. I'm on Skype with you, and I get a whole screen to myself too. Actually, Julie told me I get 2 screens today, so great setup by the Graduate Institute and GCSP. Thank you. It feels like I'm in the Oscars at this point. Of course, I do wish that I was physically there with all of you for the full day of exciting events made possible by the amazing and compassionate, not to mention passionate GCSP team, and to experience with you and be inspired by the stories, the performances, and the expert takeaways of today's guests and participants. You see, with new media and technology, we can create spaces for dialogue and surpass travel restrictions, no matter the distance or time zones. We are empowered, unstoppable citizens of this world, and GCSP and USIP get that. I'm happy to be in this creative space with you today to connect, to cooperate, to build community, as Fleur was saying, and to promote peace, and to share with you why creativity, storytelling, and the strategic uses of media and the arts are core elements of this MAP course and the work I do in designing creative spaces for community building, positive change, leadership development, and learning peace, because peace is learned. For now, I will take you on a small journey into my past, my personal, professional experiences, see what led me to my present moment, why this MAP course is so personal to me. And I do hope that this journey, this story of mine, relates to you the importance of media and the arts as transformative tools. And when I say media and the arts, just to clarify that just a little bit, I mean mainstream media, digital, social media, poetry, live art, street art, music, dance, film, theater, and so on. Of course, creativity and one's imagination are not limited to art. Creativity is the act of generating innovative solutions and giving birth to new concepts and being resourceful and inspiring others, as you'll hear us say during the course, which we hope you will take, the online course, Media and the Arts for Peace. I believe Albert Einstein, one of my favorite guys, was proof to this when he said, "I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world." Our imagination, our creative expressions, and the messages our story carry can lead to effective positive change, which is peace, or effective negative change, which is violence and war, and it can do both. It's a double-edged sword, but it all depends on our intentions, our end goal, and the strategies we use to create and frame our narratives, express our identities, and give voice to our stories. So speaking of stories, and why this course is personal to me. Well, my life story has been an amalgam of conflict and peace. It has been through creativity and creative spaces that I've been able to make sense of it all, and still trying. I was born and raised in Kuwait to Syrian parents, and my first exposure to a creative and entrepreneurial world has been through the lens of my immediate family. That is a world consisting of fashion, art curation, advertising, and photography. In 1990, following the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, this was the first time I was displaced and separated from my family to then finish my American high school at the Cairo American College in Egypt. Right after that, I found myself in post-Civil War Lebanon in 1991, where I did my undergrad, majoring in radio, TV, film, and theater at the Lebanese American University. Then I traveled across the Middle East to launch my career in media and the arts and communications, finally arriving in Syria in the fall of 2000. My fourth home, where my career soared until that too was hijacked. So here I am today in the United States, my fifth home, after being forced to leave Syria, my family, my friends, and my career. Before arriving in the United States on January 18, 2012, a date I will not forget, I had the opportunity to say good morning Syria every day to millions of radio listeners across Syria. And the 3-hour daily live show was inspired by Robin Williams' Good Morning Vietnam, a movie you must watch if you haven't watched it yet. I also traveled often to the United States to speak about my firsthand experience of the power of media in social cultural reform, which back then I called positive media. That was before a revolution, an armed conflict, chemical weapons, proxy war, and radicals dominating the narrative about Syria, and an all-out genocide. Since 2012 in the United States, I helped found Suryali, a Syrian independent online radio that fosters peacebuilding, reconciliation, and democracy. Suryali, by the way, has a double meaning, and it means Syria is mine. It also means surreal, as in the way we feel back home. And what's going on back home to us is very surreal. And if Suryali can get two warring factions to like their Facebook page and comment that Suryali is their voice, then they must be doing something right. After Suryali, I moved on as an independent creative consultant and producer. And in 2014, I was granted, thankfully, a full scholarship from the Frederick Packey Foundation and earned an executive master's degree in international affairs from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, later teaching at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. It's still morning for me, and I'm only on my first cup of coffee, so. At this point, especially when I got to do my master's degree in international affairs, I felt things were coming in full circle. With my lifeline infused with change, turbulence, conflict, and with it the power of media and the arts, and later, and combined with a master's degree in international affairs, I decided my thesis is going to be on the role of media and the arts amid the Syrian, Afghan, and Bosnian conflicts. Through my research, I found that shaping mindsets and changing people's attitudes and behavior is at the core of peace building, and that peace building scholars and practitioners increasingly recognize that sustainable peace requires more than cognitive rational engagement. And I also found that media and the arts flourish in conflict. Not to forget that working with radio deepened my understanding of the power of media. This understanding was further expanded when I witnessed the Arab uprisings unfold. The journalists, media presenters, myself included, poets, filmmakers, artists, and peaceful activists posed as a dangerous threat to authoritarian regimes and warring factions. So, those in media and the arts became targets, leading them to go into exile. Otherwise, they're going to experience imprisonment, torture, and even death. And so my passion for such powerful creative tools developed, and why the GCSP guests for today are here to show and tell us through their own experiences about that very power. Remember that peace does not happen overnight, but over time. And there is one way, or there is no one way to peace. There is no one person or one organization. In an ever-changing and complex world, we must keep an open mind when approaching peace. Peace is a creative act, and it is made possible when it's all inclusive. The strategic uses of the arts, amplified by the media, and their interplay, as Ambassador Doucet said, is a key component of peace building, a tool that can and should complement other more traditional negotiation, conflict transformation, and peace building activities. So let's make peace, and let's make it more captivating than war. Thank you.
Thank you, Hani, on behalf of all of us. It was really wonderful to hear your story. It's weird talking to a camera, sorry. I've got red shoes, and I read around the audience, but we're trying to keep the theme going. So next, we have the Damascus String Quartet, which I mentioned earlier. It's my great pleasure and honour to welcome them. I think they're going to come down as I introduce them. They were founded in 2015 in Berlin. The orchestra is composed of 65 to 75 professional and academic musicians. 70% are refugees, 30% are migrants. They perform classical music and works by Syrian composers, as well as Arabic, Oriental heritage music, and contemporary music. They've performed and represented the Syrian expat Philharmonic Orchestra in several international forums, political, economic, and cultural events, and conferences across Europe, including Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, and Belgium. So on the first violin, we have Jehad Jezba. If we could say hello. Sorry, here you are. Great. On the second violin, we have Hifron Mehan. On the viola, we have Mazen Hussein. On the cello, we have Basilius Alawad. And on the double bass, the gentleman who's put all this together is Raed Jezba. Now, I know they are very honoured, and we are very honoured to welcome soprano to join them today, Racha Rizk. She was a pioneer in Arabic. She was a pioneer in Arabic classical music from her childhood and has sung many pieces in the Damascus Orchestra. She was head of opera in the High Institute of Music in Damascus, and she has arranged some of the pieces that you have the pleasure to listen to this evening. So thank you.
They tune their instruments. I will just introduce the program that we're gonna play today. Most of the program are some pieces from the traditional Syrian repertoire, but arranged by different musicians, very great Syrian musicians, for this quintet. Especially, there are some pieces specially made for this evening. So enjoy. Thank you. Well, the first piece is a very old traditional Arabic song dated from the 9th century. And this form of song is called the muwashah. Muwashah is a kind of a song dated from the Andalusian period, the golden age of the Arabic Empire. And this muwashah called Lamma Bada Yatafanna. And it's arranged for orchestra before and for this quintet by Nouri al-Hibani, a great composer and arranger, Syrian musician who's living now in Germany. So enjoy it. traditional folk song. Is an instrumental piece written by Elias Aboud, a young Syrian composer. In fact, he's a percussionist, but it seems that he's a very good composer also. He did this piece on rhythm called Georgina, and it's a very famous rhythm in the Iraq area. So enjoy, and it's called Georgina. The next song, it's an old a song written by Muhammad al-Qasabji, which is a very big, great Egyptian composer from the early 20th century. And it's sung by Asmahan, which is a great Syrian singer who died very young, but who did a great career in the Egyptian movies, the great golden period of Egyptian cinema, which started in the 40s, 50s, and so on. So this song is some kind of mixture between Arabic music and the opera technique of singing. This song is arranged with a new arrangement for orchestra by Nouri Ruhaibani, the Syrian composer, but he did this special arrangement for the quintet for today, which we're gonna play for the first time for you. So enjoy. of Arabic traditional music, which is called qad. And the qad in the Arabic music, or especially in Aleppo, because it's an invention of Aleppo, it's a traditional song that we changed the lyrics so they can be religious content, or the inverse. Sometimes we take a religious song, some kind of prayer, and we change the lyrics to sing them in some, parties or marriage, or so. And it's called qad because it means that it has exactly the same form, the same melody, the same rhythm. We just change the lyrics. So this qad called Ya Ghazali, and I tried to search to see who's the composer, but I couldn't find it. In fact, in all my researches, I found that musicians from Homs and from Aleppo, they are both, they have some conflict between them who written this song. So I have two candidates, but since I'm not sure who's the composer, so I prefer to say that it's an old song, so enjoy. And I did the arrangement specially for this evening also. Enjoy, thank you.
Ya Ghazali
older song from the, I think the 20s of the 20th century also, sung by Munira Mahdiya, which is a great Egyptian singer, and she's in the same period of Kulthum. She was a little bit before, but she's not very well known as Kulthum. And this song is called على موج البحر. Jihad did the arrangement. Yes, I am sorry, which is another Syrian violinist called Mayas Yamani, who did the arrangement for a full orchestra and for the quintet too. So enjoy. written by Najib Reyes. Najib Reyes is one of the founders of the modern Syria after the independence from the French occupation. And he wrote this song while he was in prison in the Damascus citadel in prison. So he was talking in this song about how much he enjoyed the darkness of the jail, because for him it means that after this darkness of this night there will be a dawn of freedom. So I did the arrangement for the quintet for this song, and it's called Ya Dhalam As-Sijn. Will be the famous Dalida song, Ya Helwa Ya Baladi. And we chosen this song because it means for us a lot of nostalgia in this song. It means my beautiful homeland. So Jihad this time who did the arrangement for the SEPO orchestra, the Syrian expat orchestra, and for the quintet too. So enjoy.
yours will demonstrate, and I hope that it's been captured by the cameras and the auditory, because that was absolutely magnificent and breathtaking. And if anything can demonstrate the power to communicate through music, you have done it. And I'm sure we have some questions from the audience. We have a few moments, but I'd just like to give you the opportunity to tell your story about how and why you came together. Would you like to?
Yeah, it's your turn now.
So what I have to speak. Good evening, Masal Khair. Thank you for coming and thanks for the invitation. We are very happy to play here in Geneva with a great Soprano Racha Rizk and the Damascus Quintet to represent our orchestra, the Syrian Expat Philharmonic Orchestra. Is a symphony orchestra for the Syrian professional and academic musicians who live in European Union countries, and is a symphony orchestra in exile for Syrians. Do you have any question about this project?
Do you have any messages that you want to share about what
Yes,
you're
exactly.
trying to communicate through your music?
We have many aims and messages from this orchestra. And as you know that many media talk about the refugees, that they are here in Europe to destroy it and etc. And our message from this orchestra, we are here to build hand by hand with the European people, to build this society. We have our work, our profession, our dreams, our family, and we would like to save them. So we have rights to search about the safe place, and Europe, this is our now second homeland, and we would like to build with the others. And especially that 70% of the members of the orchestra are refugees. So I hope this message can understood from many of these people, and of course is a chance to many Syrian musicians to come back to their instruments after very long and dangerous trip from Syria to Europe to cross the sea, and so it's very good to they come back to their instruments and perform Syrian symphonic music again.
Thank you. Does anyone have a burning question before we go to the break? Please.
What is your story? How did you come together? When did you start?
Yeah.
You play?
Very beautiful question. Yes. I started this orchestra 2015. When I know that a lot of Syrian musicians, around 70 Syrian musicians who play orchestral instruments in all over Europe. And I started to contact them by Facebook to say, hello, how are you? Where you live now? I have this idea, what do you think? You say yes. I contacted the composers from all over the world. They are Syrians, but they live now in Europe, Canada, America, and they say, yes, we can compose works special for the symphony orchestra, or they already did some of these works original, special for the symphony orchestra, some of them from traditional music, arranged special for the symphony orchestra. And yes, and we did around more than 20 concerts in all over Europe. And then we founded this quintet to represent the orchestra when we have small stage, not enough for full orchestra. And this chance to meet many people. And of course, many soloists was with us, like Mrs. Racha Rizk. And I think the audience loved this music, and our concert was all of them sold out. We are happy for this result, and we would like to continue, and we would like to do our best to we cannot change the situation, we cannot stop the war, but maybe we can do some hope for not just Syrians, all the people and human in all over the world, especially when they have war in their country or the place when they live, because I think we don't believe in borders. This is just in the map. But the true, we are in one earth and we have the same feelings. So thank you so much. We are happy.
I think it's absolutely clear that we do love your music, and I wish I could speak Arabic to communicate in your language, because you've done remarkably well this evening. I have one quote before we go to an intermission that I'd like to share. It is, absolutely. Martin Luther King said, "The freedom songs are playing a strong and vital role in our struggle. They give the people a new courage and a sense of unity. I think they keep alive a faith, a radiant hope in the future, particularly in our most trying hours." And I think you've done that this evening. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. So I'd like to invite you all to go upstairs, take a breath of fresh air outside, in the cafeteria area. There's some refreshments awaiting. And if we could be back here, please, in 10 minutes. So a quick pit stop before we continue our journey. So we're going to try and get moving because we are running slightly late. A number of people asked me during the break if the orchestra have a CD that can be purchased, and they haven't yet produced one. They haven't been able to. If anyone here or watching online is able to support them in recording their music, then please contact us, because it would be fantastic to share this and also could help them to raise some much needed funds. So please, if anyone has those expertise or contacts, get in touch with us. Now, next we are going to be experiencing some theatre. Dr. Ramamani, who was the founder of the Theatre of Transformation, said, "True art, like true humanity, is born out of personal and collective crisis, out of strength that emerges from suffering, out of the power that emerges from pain. This is what makes art transformative. This is what makes us fully human." We have performing for us today 3 students who are studying at the Geneva Academy for Human Rights and who are stewards of the Theatre of Transformation Academy. We have Tafadwa Christmas from Zimbabwe. He's a transitional justice expert, human rights lawyer, and specialises in litigating torture cases. We have Eunice Yoko from Kenya. She's a former transitional justice and human rights officer for Refugee Law Project Uganda. And we have Nipunika Lekamwasam from Sri Lanka. She's a former research coordinator at the Sark Cultural Centre and a writer and editor.
In the world of ruins, I wander amongst the cacophony of empty vessels. Where once there used to be a sky and a home, now there is none. There is also not a part of me. For I was the happy child of spring with my friends in warm lit homes. Now there is none. Although it has rained much to drown me, it has not rained enough to wash away who I am. So like sunsets of a widowed evening, in new homes and in new cities, in your arms and his, hope in its little light is born. I do not know much about belonging now. Something happens to men who claim. I believe they all die. I live with what the world calls hope. For tonight, it is my home in the ruins, amidst wandering, amidst wandering, amidst wandering.
I will never forget July 10th, 1986, when the government soldiers camped at my homestead in Gulu. They said that I was a father to the rebels and that they wanted to teach me a lesson. They raped me and also raped my wife. My wife was 6 months pregnant. She had a miscarriage and lost the kids. 2 months later, she also died. I was left alone, lost in this world. I tried to narrate my ordeal to the government officials, but they could not hear of it. But still, I refused to remain silent. I refused to remain in the dark. And today, I'm no longer a victim. I'm a survivor and an activist for male survivors of rape. Today, I am no longer empty. I am full of potential. And I am a leader.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this Community Human Rights Defenders Award. I'm so happy to be with you today, but my heart is heavy because I stand before you without my friend. My friend, Crispin Chinjeke, who is no longer with us, but who lives on through my story, which is our story. My name is Western Katio. I come from Zimbabwe, in a village which very few of you know about. I'm 57 years old. They dragged me from my house together with my friend and took us to a torture base where they beat us up and called us traitors because we dared to vote. They left my friend with me, and for 3 days I tried to wake him up. Crispin! 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 But he did not wake up. For 3 days, I spent 3 nights with the dead body of my friend. When I managed to escape and I got home, my wife told me to stop everything to do with community activism. And I said I would never again work for my community. But when I lay down to sleep, each and every night Crispin would come and would ask me this question: Weston, is this how our story is going to end? Is this how our story is going to end? Are we going to end up as victims? Is this how our story is going to end? So one morning I got up, I got the bus and I went to the town called Harare. I looked around for lawyers until I could find one. And I told them my story. And they warned me, they said it would take a lot of time for us to be able to get justice. And I told them I was prepared to take all the time in the world for my friend to get justice and for me to get justice. Today I stand before you holding this award because we've managed to not only get justice for myself, but I've also managed to get justice for my friend. So what I want to say to you is, even if I will cease to exist because I've breathed my last, my friend and I will continue to live on through our story. Thank you so much.
My name is Edouard. I am from Rwanda. When I was 8 years old, I saw them chop off the head of a man in my hospital room in front of my eyes. Then they killed his son. That was the day I wrote my first poem. In it, I asked my Hutu family, our neighbors. Why? Why did you kill them? Aren't you ashamed? As I am. I kept writing poems. The president invited me to share my story and to recite my poem on the National Day of Reconciliation. Every one of my poems sows a seed for reconciliation. My name is Munira. I am from Afghanistan. I also took a peacebuilding course with GCSP in Baku. I work for the government, for the Ministry of Internal Governance to build our country. But I am also an artist. We have created a women artist collaborative. My favorite project is with our street children. I go to them one by one and I ask them, what is your name? What is your creative gift? What is your dream for your life and for our country? And then I give them paper and colors so they can paint their dream, so their future will not be like the future of the Taliban. My name is Ashmina Ranjit from Nepal. In the beginning, we artists thought, what can we do to contribute to the conflict and the peace building in our country? We were just watching all the activists from outside. But one day we realized, how can there be peaceful change without us artists? That is when I realized I'm not an artist, I am an artivist. That day, we all got together and went to the streets, the poets, the storytellers, the painters, together with the politicians, the diplomats, and together with all the people of all backgrounds, all religions, all tribes. We joined the Jan Andolan, the People's Revolution, and we ended the monarchy. We negotiated peace in our country and started the long dance to build peace. Thank you. We're just going to introduce ourselves for a second. Yes, please.
I'm Nipunika Lekambas. I'm from Sri Lanka, and I have been involved at the policy level for a regional organization that worked on cultural diplomacy and reconciliation, where we did policies to effect change. But what I have realized since I was exposed to the theater of transformation is that there is a breakdown of dialogue between the policy level and the grassroots, where the actual concerns are. Because of this breakdown, sometimes the change we envision and the transformation we want to enact they are not effective because we do not actually witness what is happening at the grassroots level. So my poem was basically about hope, was done in collaboration with an Indian colleague of mine, which is important because South Asia is one of the most disintegrated regions in the world where dialogue is minimum, and because of interstate and intrastate conflicts. So for me, the theater of transformation is important in the sense that it humanizes the experiences we have at the policy level.
I am Unisoko from Kenya, and I have worked with victims and survivors of conflict in northern Uganda on issues to do with identity, justice, and belonging. And my vision is to empower victims so that they transcend their victimhood and become agents of change. And for me, theater of transformation is a way in which victims can be able to find their path from victimhood to agents of change through witnessing what is and awakening what can be, and also through envisioning change and enacting transformation. Thank you.
My name is Tafazo Christmas. I am a lawyer from Zimbabwe. I've been working with victims of organized violence and torture in my country for over 7 years. The story that I shared with you, is the story of one of my clients. It's one of several people who, like him, have suffered harm at the hands of various political groups. These people are people who are not glamorous enough to be named. They are, most of the time, we just write them in reports as figures. 22% of people have been tortured. These people are not popular enough for us to put their names somewhere for us to have the commemorations built up for them. But their harm is very, very real. So for me, the theater of transformation is about, first of all, tapping into our own humanity and recognizing and realizing that we are human beings, first and foremost, and also realizing that the people that we seek to help, in as much as they require our expertise as lawyers, as counselors, and as different experts, what they really require and they search for is core humans. They are looking for other human beings to make them feel human again. Because the perpetrators, when they assaulted them, they did not only seek to harm them in terms of their mortal bodies, but they also sought the social death of the victims. So the theater of transformation is all about trying to tap into our humanity and using our humanity to reassure survivors that they are part of society. And it is this humanity that we can create a better society. Because without humanity, human beings might continue to roam the face of this earth, but humanity will be extinct.
Wow, thank you. You've all clearly done some amazing work, and it's work that needs to continue. So we wish you every success and great courage in going forward. Hashtag Media Arts Peace. These stories need to be shared. Thank you.
Beautiful. And while we move these things out for our panel, we had one question to ask you that you might want to just ask yourself first. What is your creative gift that you would like to now bring into your work? And while we get the people on the table, you could whisper it to your friend next door.
Okay, thank you so much. So, whilst we get ready for the next stage of the evening, I'd like to start introducing our conversation speakers. So we have hosting the conversation, Xavier Colin. He's known to many of you. He's an associate fellow with us at the GCSP. He has an incredibly long and substantial career in journalism as a presenter and producer, and most recently that was at the Geopolitics show. I probably can't do justice to him or the speakers that I'm about to introduce because they do have such impressive backgrounds. So the first two that I'd like to introduce are cartoonists that are known to many of you, Hani Abbas and Patrick Chappatte. Hani Abbas is a Syrian Palestinian cartoonist. He was born in 1977 in the large Palestinian refugee camp of Yarmouk near Damascus. In 2012, he posted on Facebook a cartoon showing the flower that symbolizes the Syrian revolution as immortal. Syrian secret services immediately threatened him, and he fled Syria and has sought asylum in Switzerland, where he now lives. In May 2014, he was awarded the Editorial Cartoon International Prize, which is Prix International du Dessin de Presse, by Kofi Annan here in Geneva.
Thank you. Sit down.
Patrick Chappatte was a son of a Swiss father and Lebanese mother. He was born in 1967 in Karachi, Pakistan. Caricaturist and comic strip reporter, he has worked for a number of international newspapers, including the New York Times and Newsweek, as well as on modern media, including Yahoo and in France. He has made cartoons notably about the Ivory Coast rebels, Gaza, and the Elysee corridors. In 2012, he became the first non-American person to receive the Thomas Nast Award given by the Overseas Press Club of America, and he has subsequently founded the Plan 2 with the Swiss Foundation Cartooning for Peace, which awards every 2 years an international prize to a brave cartoonist. Welcome.
Interesting one.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Pedro Rosa Mendes. Welcome. He is a writer. He was born in Canas do Bom Jardim in Portugal, and after his jurisprudence studies, he worked as a journalist, mainly for the Portuguese Daily Publico. He's written for a number of papers and in the media has reported on a frighteningly long list of conflicts, starting with Afghanistan, Angola, Australia, the Balkans, Bangladesh, Burma, Cape Verde. It's actually quite depressing to read on. I'll conclude saying it's A to Z and it goes to Zimbabwe. Welcome. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr Caty Clément. She is known to many of us as an academic and practitioner with extensive field experience in Africa, working on conflict and fragile states. For the last 8 years, she led GCSP's work on peacebuilding and taught at the Harvard Kennedy School. She's developed toolkits for the World Bank and a number of other courses and has contributed substantially to the course that we're launching today. Thank you, Caty. And last but not least, by any means, Hedda Kraus-Schrogen.
And you?
Hedda has been with a lot of us earlier today as an infamous playwright. She's written a number of plays, most recently dramatised the Nobel laureate Svetlana Alexievich, The Unwomanly Face of War. It captures the stories of women who have fought in the Red Army during the Second World War and who have not previously had a voice in history. She has represented and humanised the works of a number of human rights defenders to make their stories and experiences more accessible to new audiences from schools to parliaments. And we've heard how Seven the Play has received international acclaim and been performed in 32 countries. Welcome, Hedda. And sorry, I was mistaken.
Did you say last but not least before?
Last but not least, no.
Okay, so this is after last and after least person.
Dr. Rama Mani, please welcome to the stage, co-founder of the Theatre of Transformation. She is also the convener of the Enhancing Global Transformation Collaborative Initiative at the Centre for International Studies at the University of Oxford. She has a number of awards and acclaims, like all our panellists, but welcome, thank you. I can't do you justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I feel a little bit, I hate to be watched by, you see the man here, he's watching us. If those people cannot bring peace, I wonder who can. Tonight, first of all, congratulations to all of you. Some of you have been with us all day long. Thank you very much, Fleur, for doing all that work. Thank you, Ambassador Doucet, for bringing all those people together with a huge sense of optimism. I will have some nasty questions about the impact of all this. But anyway, let's do something crazy, something that I've always dreamed of doing. Let's pretend that this is the audience and you are the panelists. Just for a chance. Imagination. Remember what Hani al-Sayed said just a while ago, quoting Einstein, knowledge is limited. I'm not talking about you, of course, but imagination is not. And you know what? You will have the floor first. I would like 2 or maybe 3 persons in the audience, in the panel, to tell us what exactly do you expect from those people on the stage? Do you believe in what they're doing, in what they are achieving? Are you skeptical? Do you have a good experience? Would 2 or 3 people just stand up and make this a huge conversation and not a bunch of monologues? So who's ready to just ask a question? What do you expect from this panel tonight? Again, the panel is you. Imagination. Now this is your chance to be famous. This is your chance to do something really crazy and talk even before the people on stage have. What do you expect from, this conversation. This is a table, this is family, anyone can speak. Imagination, creativity, strategy maybe. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Just identify yourself.
So my name is Wenmai Chung. I work at Decaf ISAT. And what I expect out of this is, let me just maybe preface by saying I dislike the word innovation oftentimes because I feel that it's misused. So what I expect and hope to hear from this discussion is real and actual innovative ways in which your pieces of work, whether it be through theater or through comics, has actually contributed to building peace.
Innovation, we'll mention that. Somebody else about what to expect or not to expect tonight? Any volunteer? You have the floor, this is your chance. Maybe, remember this is a conversation, so you people can interact and even interrupt me. Take advantage of that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Two ladies, we need one man.
My name is Cindy Ray. I'm a fellow with the GCSP. And I'm curious what inspires you creatively to translate your experiences, which are so painful and very many negative feelings, into positive experiences.
Interesting one. Last one, maybe somebody else. We have two ladies first. I wish we would have two. Man, go ahead. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. I'm Marc Finot, a former French diplomat working at GCSP. And I know some of you, like us, have been working with government officials. But at the same time, you also have your experience with civil society. How do you reconcile this experience, and how do you make it effective to work collaboratively and in partnership towards the same goal that we all share, which is peace?
Let's start out with this last question. Would you answer that?
I was staring at the young man here who had his hand up, so...
Oh, you did? Sorry, I
yes.
didn't see it. You're entitled to speak up. Go ahead. No censorship, anything of that kind here. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm Mark. I'm a student at the Graduate Institute. And so I was wondering that your work now has become very famous and has become somehow a public good. Do you feel that sometimes people might misappropriate you or even misunderstand you? And if yes, what is your personal experiences?
That's a question I will relate to Patrick. Is there any chance that to be misunderstood? But first of all, let's talk about civil society. When you address civil society, are you, in a position, in a strong position to be believed or not? I mean, in other words, how do you measure the impact? That goes for all of you. How do you measure the impact of all your work, all the things that you've done in your respective fields? Because if there's no impact, after all, what are we talking about?
Yeah. I love it because actually, Mark and Cindy, your question, for me, the two come together. And I guess what I love and enjoy is that my work is constantly going back and forth. And that was what led to the start of Theatre of Transformation. Seeing the gap that existed between civil society and what was happening to them in areas of conflict, and seeing what we were doing at the political, diplomatic, academic, policy-making level, and the lack of creativity, and that was what led. So when you said, what is it that gives you hope in the midst of all of this? If one stayed here and didn't have creativity, we would be, well, that's why we have so many breakdowns in our, I hate to say this, in our world. It is that every story in civil society especially shows us the creativity. So all of Theatre of Transformation, every story that my students shared are real stories of how people unlock their creativity in the midst of crisis and transform themselves and transform society. And the reason I see the impact is when, Christian and GCSP has been the learning lab together with Oxford and the Graduate Institute, where in our classes with diplomats, with policymakers, with military officials, we are literally stepping on stage and enacting personal and societal transformation.
Hedda, I was wondering, for some of you who were not attending the workshop, very interesting workshop between noon and 2 o'clock this afternoon, what is the reaction of, let's say, the military people you're addressing to, or even the military people that you invite, to play their role? Are they reluctant first, enthusiastic in the second time, and then they forget about it? Or they learn the lesson? And do they tell you? Do they tell you what they retain? Take a microphone, that will be much better. Thank you very much.
To those who don't know exactly what it is that I do, you could say we put decision makers on stage to tell, in one of the projects, it's women human rights defenders' stories, often in front of their peers or in front of a large public audiences, up to 5,000 people we've had in audiences in Bangladesh, actually. So we did two bigger works in the NATO with the top military NATO leadership. Mm-hmm. And going back also to Mark's, I believe, question about the connection there between leadership and society, right. Mm-hmm. I want to say that that we do a little bit of a hostage-taking when we engage some of these top leadership people. For instance, the NATO generals.
But they know what to expect.
Well, not really? Until they are on stage.
Right.
Because that's the moment when it happens. So we might work for quite a while to engage the people to become a part of the project, giving all these positive results that we've had in the past. You want to work with gender sensitizing? This is a great way because we have this track record of having worked in many countries, etc. And I think, and now I'm kind of telling my secrets, but I think a lot of the people, like NATO generals, right, who accept to be in this, they think it's going to be a little bit of a piece of cake. Mm-hmm. And then when they actually encounter the text and they encounter the audience, they realize that they are working on something rather impactful. Mm-hmm. Now, exactly what that has resulted in, I leave to the research community to follow up. It's very hard with an artistic endeavor to say over time. Yeah. You can say in the moment, but over time, what kind of impact it has. But we need, okay.
As I said, you're all working towards peace. The cartoonists are certainly doing a great work. Those two persons right there, they're weapons of mass destruction, really. Considering the huge impact that they may have. But Patrick, before we go into that question about being misunderstood, I know that you want to show just a few cartoons from your friend Hani. Go ahead, if you want to. And then I'll have that question about being misunderstood. How dangerous?
But no, ask your question because I'm going to reply.
Okay. When your cartoon is published, and it is now, everyone knows here, it's published everywhere. You're so well known now. Do you have negative reactions? I'm not talking about the dictator in this or that country, but any negative reaction because you're going too far, or you're too mean, or you're too descriptive? Any bad reaction?
I am mean for sure, very mean. But let me reply. First, I'm here mostly to introduce my friend Hani Abbas, which I will do in a few seconds.
Well, he will introduce yourself too. So
yes, but introduce you the context in which we met. Can we bring back Erdogan, because I like to have Erdogan with me.
You're the only one in the room who likes the man, but that's all right.
Est-ce qu'on peut retrouver le dessin? No.
Well,
okay, I'm gonna click.
Censorship works.
I destroy everything. Okay, no. Okay, this cartoon, to answer your question precisely about being misunderstood, that's a cartoon that I did 2 years ago in the New York Times, and I guess not hard to understand, talking about, and that was before the coup and before all the repression.
That was before?
Yes, it was 2 years ago. And there's a story behind that cartoon, because that story was in the New York Times. A man was arrested because he was holding this cartoon in a demonstration in Turkey. Wow. And he was interrogated by the police for insulting the Turkish flag. talk about being misunderstood. And he had his best defense. He said, of course not. I would be the first to defend the flag of my country. Here, the Turkish flag stands only for the Turkish democracy that you see Erdogan slicing bits by bits. So he gave his own defense. And that was, as I said, 2 years ago. Now, more recently, you have our colleague Musa Kart. He's a Kurdish cartoonist. And that's his spot on the, I think it's Cumhuriyet, the daily newspaper. Yeah, very, very good. Can you say it again?
Cumhuriyet.
Right. That's his spot where he does his daily cartoon, and it has been blank for the last, I don't know, for the last few months. He was part of the arrest after the coup. He's still in jail, expecting trial in July. So that's the reality of cartooning today. The answer to those challenges, the answer, for example, to that situation was a sign of solidarity that we address. I mean, cartoonists from all over the world, especially through Cartooning for Peace, which I'm going to say a few words about. We, all of us, sent cartoons that were published in that spot, just as a sign of solidarity and to show that we are still in thoughts with that colleague of ours, cartoonist. So Cartooning for Peace, which is a catchy name, sounds good. And you may ask, will cartoons make peace? Ha, ha, ha. Actually, the real message is cartooning against war. It's cartoons against war. It just doesn't sound as well.
Against war, violence, dictatorship, and all that. You're always sort of against.
I think that's the job of cartooning, editorial cartooning, is to be...
Is it much easier to draw rather than... I mean, how do you draw and define peace, except for a white dove?
No, that's why I think editorial cartooning is about being critical in whatever regime, whatever countries. The first and best job is being critical of the authorities of the government to keep the power at bay. And through that, I think it's playing a positive role, through the critical role. And just to show you that other cartoon from Zunar in Malaysia, he was a winner of the last cartooning. We have a prize every 2 years that we give, Cartooning for Peace. Hani Abbas won the prize 4 years ago with Kofi Annan. And so that cartoon about the huge corruption scandal in Malaysia, Malaysia, right. That cartoon by Zunar is one of the many cartoons where he has been hitting so hard on the prime minister, on corruption, on the powers. He's now awaiting trial under 9 charges of sedition, and he risked 49 years in jail. And this cartoon, that was another winner of the same prize. It's Gado from Kenya. And he's another person who paid a direct price in his life, like Zunar, who is now risking 49 years in jail.
Who's the man, the president? The man in the middle? That's
the president from Tanzania, neighboring Tanzania. And you see him being pampered by the graces of corruption, incompetence, cryonism. And Gado had to pay a price for his courage. He had, like Zunar, relentlessly doing his job, which is the job of being critical. And he's an amazing, I mean, he's the best known cartoonist of West Africa, but he lost his job. He lost his job because of this cartoon after 26 years in the main newspaper of Kenya. So just to illustrate...
You have another one? Sure. You have another,
that was just to illustrate a few, and I just want to finish with Hani Abbas, who's here, who was the recipient of the prize 4 years ago. Just show his cartoon, and if you want, he might explain it later and tell about his situation. But that's the image. That was the poster of the Cartooning for Peace prize and exhibition in 2014. And this image looks so innocent, but it's so subversive. And that's an image, a simple image, for which he had to flee. And that's a cartoon that changed his life.
In the audience, do you people think that this is going too far or not even enough? Is there any purpose that is being achieved with that kind of cartoons, except for the cartoonist to be jailed? Any option? Just raise your hand if you want to give your opinion on that. Generally, not one person, but on Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Wakana. I come from Japan. I think that criticizing, has the power of cutting and slashing, which hurts. And I think this is the motive or the drive to push further those who are already being hurted. For example, it's my opinion jumps a little bit, but let's take, for example, the President of the United States, Donald Trump. I think that he's one of these, let's say, victims of these, harsh critical. When we remember the times when he was just a candidate, all of the traditional, political the media and the politicians were very, very harshly criticizing him. And I think that really pushed this, group of people, which is further dividing the world or the globe. So my question is, I think we're in a turning point to see what power criticizing has. I think we have to shift our minds to transform this power of criticizing into another generation. Thank you.
Well, Trump was not only criticized, he was victimized, and that might be the reason why he was elected in the first place. So it's difficult to say. Hani, tell us about your experience and a word about Cartoonists for Peace, because this is a very, very, very interesting, combination of different cartoonist artists, and very efficient work is being done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me. This is the first time I speak English. It's good for me. So first, I want to say two things before I explain what about my stories or about my drawing. First thing, there are a lot of cartoonists and journalists and photographic in Syria and in all the Middle East and maybe in another place in the world. They do a lot, and some of them they lost their life, and some of them they lost their job. Some of them lost their country and become as refugees because they have the message to convey to all the world. A lot of my friends also in the prison now, and a lot of them as refugees. The lucky of them become refugees, but another people stay in prison, and some of them stay in the sky. So it's difficult to send your message in solution like Syria now under the war, but no, they do a lot to let the world know what happened in Syria, for example, or for Iraq and in Egypt, but nothing going well. Nothing. The message is arrived, but the international community didn't do anything for these people, and it's so sad and it's so hard for us. It's a very hard experience for us because we built everything what we do before during the Syrian Revolution and the Revolution Arab Springs, for example. We bought a big dreams and we big hope, but in the last we haven't nothing, and everything's going in another way, and we lost everything. The second thing I want to speak about it, what we're doing now, what we have to do, what we have to explain. We have just our dream and just a little bit hope, and we have our story, the real story. Every time the winners in the war, they wrote the history, but nobody asked about the losers. I think we are losers now, and every times, because we are standing with the right, in this world. So we trying to write our stories, write our real stories, to continue our life. So we drawing for life, and we live, continue in life for drawing. About my drawing, first of the Syrian revolution at 2011, everything could change. A lot of power, it's coming to us. It's also we have a big horror and pride and everything. It's crazy, but we stand with the people, and we left everything and stand with the people and standing with the revolution, casting, freedom. And we know from the first, we know we are maybe lost something, but we lost a lot of things in the last. We didn't know, nobody know. These cartoons, I draw it after 8 months from the revolution. That times the Syrian regime army, they kill the people in the street, kill the people everywhere, by the plane, by the bombs. So I asking in these cartoons the Syrian army to
By the
left the regime and standing with the people, don't kill the people, don't kill the revolution, and going to the flowers. The flowers is
but it could be any army
the symbol
in the
icon
world.
of the revolution. So
this is a universal criticism anyway. It could be any army in the world with
it's
beautiful
international.
flowers.
It's become
so it has a much broader message than just
it's
the Syrian
deep message and strong message that times, and these cartoons exactly make me wanted, and I change my place. A lot of times I change a lot of homes, a lot of houses, a lot of area, and in the last I succeed to go out of Syria to live to Lebanon and start the new life as new refugees, because I born as refugees, Palestinian refugees in the camp in Syria, and after I get a new experience of refugees second times, and now third times.
Thank you, Hani. I think you deserve some
of an image like this, which is just to your question, at the same time seems very innocent and hopeful and positive, and yet is very critical, and in the Syrian context is subversive, but so necessary. And because of an image like this, which is both hopeful but very critical, this man had to flee, and it changed his life.
I think, Hani, you deserve some applause because you've told us a very personal story, and we do appreciate that. I'd like to, unless you people want to speak up, and I'm sort of watching you. Pedro Menes, you've been covering so many conflicts from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, and you've been almost everywhere. You're working now at DCAF. Just one question, and I'm sure you'll have a very long answer. At what point and how do you determine that the people of the work of all the people here, no matter what their field is actually changing the world? We are in an era, that's what we learn here, we are in an era of unresolved, lasting conflicts. So what? How do we measure the impact of the work that the theater people do, the music people do, the cartoonists do? Do you have any explanations to that?
Trying to make a short answer to that, Xavier. There's, throughout more than 20 years covering conflicts, if I learned something about similarities of conflict and peace, is that you cannot approach them with a superficial idea that they are about a moment or an instant. Conflict is a process that takes years, decades, generations sometimes to form, and so is peace. And that actually, I always think of that core basics when I project into the future a positive process of social change that we, in this house, in this Maison de la Paix, called peacebuilding. And if you, I do believe, and I mean, part of my trade with a different skin, and for sure not with this tie, is also to write fiction or political fiction even. And that trade started by covering conflicts in heavily landed territories with huge numbers of anti-personnel landmines, including in the mid-1990s Angola, but later on also Afghanistan. And if I started to publish and to try to convey that reality autrement, in a different way, was to try to approach, and this I think I can locate it in Angola, everywhere outside of Luanda, where there was, and still is in part, this kind of human insularity of people that were cut from the very right to have a territory for everything, from agriculture to dreams, because the territory was so eroded and erased that you could not literally use it. You could not pass a bridge, you could not walk through a road, and so you become reduced to yourself, and there is an extreme erosion of human network of relations,
reduction
of different
reality.
Inputs. So starting from them and thinking, okay, how do you change? How do you first understand what is conflict for these people? How does someone that survives a very wicked war machine that can be actually have been laid out by someone that is not anymore alive? It can be that mean. How does a survivor integrates and articulates, for instance, his or her own presence in time? How to articulate the linearity of emotions, of life in a family? How do you project a future if your whole self was interrupted in one moment? And then trying to understand what's the human and very intimate individual dimension of conflict, try to devise ways on addressing those dimensions of conflict through a long process of rebuilding and reconstruction. Just one mention that I would like Xavier to make in relation to the cartoon of the soldiers and the flower. That speaks to me very deeply, because I come from a country, Portugal, that had the revolution in April 1974, which was basically a coup d'état by the captains, by the young officers that were killing and being killed in 3 colonial wars in Africa. And the symbol for the revolution, and actually the visual translation of the commitment of the people, of the civil society, to this thing that started as a coup d'état, was when someone, I think the folklore goes that a woman that was selling flowers started to put carnations, des œillets, in the weapons of the soldiers.
So that's peace through a coup d'état.
It's subversive, but it could be also taken as a defining moment of unity that was the very foundation of a democracy.
Thank you. Caty Clément, from your perspective of both a practitioner and academic, how do you look at this media and arts for peace online course? I mean, how efficient do you expect it to be? How interesting do you think it will be for all the people that will subscribe and be involved in that? I mean, are you optimistic, really, basically, from your own experience?
Peacebuilding is a process that you will build over the very long run. So is this course going to, by itself, bring peace? Of course not. Is it going to be a stone that is going to be helping? Definitely. If I may, because we're in the storytelling mood, so allow me. I originally started as an academic, but in 1990 I was on holidays as a student in Rwanda, and as I was stuck on the borderline watching a river flow down, and sun was setting, I realized that I was looking at bodies flowing down the river, and I counted 65 of them that evening before it became too dark and I had to stop counting. That's how I got into this business. And I think maybe for you as well, without wanting to make it that emotional, but when you think of the refugees, and Syrian refugees obviously has been strong on our mind, what speaks to you more? The data of the 65 million refugees worldwide, data of refugees in Jordan, in Turkey, or the picture of a little boy who has drowned and is dead on the beach? What has spoken to you more? What has been more impactful? And what makes you want to move and do something about this more? For me, it's the boy. I don't know what your choice is. So what I'm trying to say here is that in this particular field, and this course for me is also the end of a frustration, is that there's two problems with what we do in peace building today. There is an overwhelming focus on hard data, and there is an overwhelming focus on building institutions. And institutions will bring stability, but that will be in the long run. What people need immediately is trust, and trust is about emotions. And trust will bring peace in the short term, and that will help you bridge that gap towards the institutions. And we're not focusing on that. And trust is relating to, it's a very emotional aspect. And you will trust people for little things that they will do to you. And so building trust, legitimacy, those are the key elements. And this course and media and arts for peace are really a key way of achieving that.
Are the media really helping you? I mean, I'm a media person and sometimes I wonder.
Well, I mean, having spent most of my time in conflict areas, you're a media person, you're a journalist. We've seen the impact with Radio 1000 Colin in the genocide in Rwanda.
Negative impact, for
very
sure.
negative impact. And at the same time, we see today the effort of Radio Okapi in Congo, which is actually giving honest news on what's happening in the Congo. So it's a two-edged sword. But it is addressing the emotions, and it's the emotions that are going to make you shoot a gun. I've spent a lot of time doing DDR, SSR, security sector reform and disarmament, and it's very hard to get weapons out of a country. As a UN expert in the arms embargo in the Congo, I found guns from 1956 in Yugoslavia that are still being used today. So what you can do, and there was a picture here that said that, you can work on people not using the gun, which is another aspect. It's not only taking the gun away, but it's also preventing people from using it. And I want to so there's 2 points I'd like to make. The first one is that we have, there's 3 things that are needed to really be persuasive and to bring a vision for the future and to have new leadership that brings a peaceful society. There is, and this is from Aristotle, he said there's logos. And logos is the hard data, it's the institutions, you know, it's the hard stuff that we love. The second one is ethos, it's ethics. You need to be an ethical person and present something, and people, I think, feel that. And the third element is pathos, and pathos is relating to the emotions, and it's relating to trust and legitimacy. And that's really what makes the change. And what we see today is that we have, not only are we not using the pathos, but we also, which is a missed opportunity. And secondly, there's absolutely no feedback loop. The international institutions come in there, do their stuff, and there's no feedback loop. I've seen theater used very effectively to explain how a DDR program was going to work. but it's never been used to actually provide the feedback. And this is relating to the impact question that the lady was asking just before, is why don't you have people that were the beneficiaries or in the communities enact, again, what they felt? Because actually, sometimes it's very dangerous to speak out. But to do a fiction is much more, you know, it's more generic, and then you're able to do it. So we should go a step further, and there's really work to be done.
So far, in the audience, have any questions, or are you still skeptical or enthusiastic about what has been said about the media and arts? There's so much more to say. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Michael McKay. I just have a question about trust. Because trust, at least in adults, takes time to build. And I don't really understand how you then can move quickly forward unless you go through that process of confidence building. And in a conflict situation, thank God I've never been in one, so I don't have your experience. But I'm interested to know how you go about the actual building blocks of building trust so that it's meaningful, that you then get to the next stage, which I guess is acting together in producing a desired result. If you could just elaborate on that, please.
Anyone wishes to answer to that particular question? There, I know there's a second one, but
just go, I mean, in a second.
We'll go to you.
Yeah. You know, I think it's exactly the point Caty was making, that you can have loads of experts who'll come up with a whole manual. And the conflict, you know, there are 500,000 more landmines and bombs going off. All trust can happen like this. I was, till the age of 33, one of those people Caty was describing, right? I had all my ideas, I'd finished my PhD, I came with all these ideas of how this was going to happen. And then I saw that in 1 minute, you can have a transformation. And when the transformation happens in here, that the trust is built like this, it has a ripple effect across societies. So a lot, like all of the stories that I or any of my colleagues and students tell, are all real stories of what is it that when, you know, I thought with your third word, because I didn't know Aristotle's, that pathos is really powerful. I thought it was going to be, love, philos, right, which is love. It's like in that moment when humanity, you suddenly see, he's not just a journalist. Xavier is also a father or a brother or whatever. Vroom, everything changes. And so I do think that with any of these, like with your picture or your novel or your, a military officer saying one story face to face with the victim, vroom.
Face to face? That's the most,
that's what you do,
the most
right?
important.
I mean, they're there in the audience and sort of, yeah. And what we often do, because, you know, in conflict transformation exercises, you do role playing, but it's very artificial. But if actually I become Hedda and Hedda becomes me, or your military officer becomes the victim and the victim becomes a military officer, 30 seconds, 2 minutes.
That works.
And then it's difficult to get back into your old shoes once you've stepped in someone else's.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And André, I'm also a fellow here at GCSP. Well, I think the word that we are insisting upon tonight is building peace. Culture is throwing bridges. And when we are in war situation, those bridges are very important. We are, many of us in this room, people of the writing, policy reports, policy analysis. When I just saw the cartoon of Hani that was on the wall now, you know, with all these people, this big body, which I guess is Syria, your nation, with all these, that I think this picture, what has been Syria for me in the last 2 years or 4 years has been, okay, the talks in Geneva, what are the different factions doing, what will the Russians and the Americans do, what will Hezbollah do, you know? And suddenly you put this there. And this is so powerful, it's more than any report. And I think this is where we can move from the, well, the logos is there. I mean, the 4 stages that Caty and Rama have explained are there. But now where I will be provocative, well, Chappatte, I'm happy to see you here tonight, because when I see you digesting in one cartoon the complexity of Swiss politics before you move to Mr. Trump and other places of the world, it makes me a little bit envious of you. But now I think for this course and for all of us here, the provocative question is, how do you move from this first expression that Rama has just talked about, to moving something into people's mind who have the guns, and all of us who have been in war areas, we've met with these tough guys, and in whom you can't see any spark of humanity. And you suddenly, okay, you're listening to a piece of music with them, and you see there is something. Culture is there is a common emotion. But how to translate this emotion into simply not even putting the gun down, but just as we are in Geneva, just respecting some humanitarian principles in waging wars. And this is, for me, the biggest challenge, the biggest question that this course and this event of today is probably raising.
Well, a big challenge wouldn't have been just a while ago to have President Bashar al-Assad sitting there and listening to the Syrian musicians. Would that have changed anything in his brain and in his heart? I mean, are people receptive? Are some people just totally outside of this world of the media and of the arts? That's the first question we asked about the impact. Pedro?
You cannot aim to change the heart of Assad. If it would be possible that he was listening to the quintet, that opens a space of possibility and participation that it's very valuable itself. You will never change his heart, I believe. I was just thinking, I will not name the country, one of the most brutal civil wars in sub-Saharan Africa. And when covering years ago the last bits of the conflict, in the bush, I was trapped by the last warlord loyal to the president. Years afterwards, I meet this same person as a member of parliament. I don't think that he changed, and he actually has the honesty to be clear that he didn't change. What is interesting is that I have to devise a way to use meaningfully his new role. I met him as a warlord. I have a second chance as a member of parliament, so we can discuss about oversight, about representation.
Was that Sierra Leone? Probably.
Maybe not.
I have a question to Patrick. Not only are you very good at cartooning, but also you're a reporter, because you draw long stories. I remember the one about Ivory Coast, the one about Gaza. So you are, and I'm very jealous, you are doing the work that we television people cannot always do, because just we cannot go there. I mean, who's going to Yemen these days? What independent television is going to even Iraq or Syria? Very, very few. And so you're doing that work. Are you people trying to, by your imagination, are you describing reality? In which case you have an incredible responsibility.
And we do have 2 minutes for this, because you're just alluding to another field of, I do believe in the power of images, and another way to experiment that is comics journalism or graphic journalism, whatever you call it, and it's reporting through cartoons, and it's, but we need an hour for that. But it is banking on the power of the image to bring people into a reality. And people might have opinions on, for example, the death penalty in America, because this was my last report. A 5-part stories for the New York Times website, which is still there, by the way. And it's not an easy subject to tackle in the US. But images is an interesting way to circumvent, whatever ideas, opinions people have. They will look at an image before they, it's not like getting into a story, reading it. Maybe they will be, an image can surprise you. It can circumvent your thinking, your opinions, and just strike you. And then you're caught, and you're going to start reading a story. And with images, you're gonna bring people to the testimony of that person who's on death row, that you might think is just a cruel monster, and then you will realize it's someone speaking because you are paying attention. So I do think that images can help you pay attention. And paying attention is the first step towards building trust, building peace. It's just looking at the other. And what better way to look than images, cartoons.
You're not only reading, you're visualizing. Sorry about that. You're visualizing the reality. But you're so close to reality. But it comes from your imagination first.
No, that in the case of graphic journalism, it's reporting, except I am very present in my reporting. The reporter is present, I represent myself, but that's just a way to bring people, to take the reader by the hand and bring them into the situation. And again, through images. If you picture the Rafah entrance in Gaza, you just do the cartoon of what you see when you get there. It's full of information. It's full of information, and it's not aggressive. It's not like we are overwhelmed by pictures of victims. We have a hard time making sense of our emotions. We see so many terrible pictures on TV, but a drawing is so simple. It lets you get into the image, and it lets you participate. Hopefully, that's my hope.
Any questions, comments about the evolution of the work of the media in that field? Sir, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Pat. Is this on? My name is
Yes,
Patrick
it is.
Sweet. I'm with the Geneva Centre for Security Policy and the Center for Creative Leadership.
A lot of people from GCSP here.
Yeah,
I wonder why.
And so I did have a thought about, first of all, I'm really humbled by the work that you do. So I'm going to say something that's critical, and it's in the spirit of learning. It's not in the spirit of throwing something at you. The idea being that you're correct. Images really do provoke. And they do bring things out, and you're very effective at doing that. And we also know from our understanding of how we humans work when we're emotional, when we are provoked, we're least likely to be able to be empathetic for the other side. And so there's a dilemma that we're doing here if we want to build trust. So if the idea is to provoke, to bring a sense of reality to people who may not have that reality, then we succeed in making them aware in an emotional state which may not get them to being able to rationally, logos, engage to build trust. And so in the past, where we've had a New York Times of the 1960s and 1950s, when cartoons could provoke and challenge a reality or challenge a false reality among people who may not really understand what's going on. Now there's so much media, there's so much provoking language, there's so much provoking stuff out there. How do we take what you're doing and provoke it so it builds trust? If we believe Caty, and I do, and I appreciate that, how do we turn this into, rather than just provoking, how do we turn this into provoking that builds trust?
Caty, do you want to answer that question? Or?
Well, there were two questions actually on the trust building, and it's probably due to the setting here, but we're trying to rationalize the trust building very much. I'm not going to go into whatever to what's not my field, so I think you should answer that. But you were saying, for instance, and I'm bringing back the trust issue. How quickly can you build trust? Why does it go so quickly? When I was investigating violations of the arms embargo on the Congo, I was dropped in a very remote area, and there was no UN. We were just dropped by a plane and took off, and then we investigated there. As we were about to leave, the plane comes back, and so we walk back. This is rebel-held territory, and with lots of blood minerals. And as we're about to leave, one of the rebels comes and he has all the minerals, and he says, well, I want you to take that into the plane, and I want to board the plane too. And he puts a gun to my head. One of the people I had interviewed was a school teacher, a local school teacher, who put himself as a human rights defender. He was 30-something, married, has a 3-year-old daughter, no protection whatsoever. And he came in and actually started to negotiate and managed to get me to leave. It was too heavy. The plane would have crashed if we had taken this on board. I trusted him just like that. That's how you build trust, because actually the logos, ethos, and pathos is done specifically for, if you follow Kairos, is for Aristotle, it's for Kairos, it's for crisis situations, specifically for crisis situations. And in those situations, that's it. If I see him, I've never forgotten him. This was 10 years ago, I never forgot him. So now the question is, how do you activate this positively? And one of the biggest problems, particularly in some of the most intractable conflicts, because you have to realize some of the conflicts have been going on. I'm speaking, for instance, in the area I know best, which is the Great Lakes in Africa. Some of those conflicts has been going on for 20 years, 25 years, in this case, 20 years. Now, most of the population, actually 60 to 70% of the population is below 25 years old, meaning people have grown up in war. In Rutshuru, I saw a group in Eastern Congo, in North Kivu. There's a group of young men who were very unhappy and who were actually walking down the street, teenagers, well-dressed, so obviously the elites, in a place where not many people go to school. And so I'm with a colleague who's there, who's Senegalese, who was also there, and we start talking to them, and they said they were upset. Their math teacher had failed them, and they were going to rape her. This is what 20 years of war does to the minds of people. And this was the norm. This is their norm in which they grew up. Eventually, it was I left my friend there, I went to get the priest, and it was the priest who worked with them. This was not, putting them in jail wouldn't help anything. You had to work on the emotions. You had to work with somebody they trusted. And I know we have to end, but I want to finish something. This is not new. This is something that our forefathers knew a long time ago. I just want to give you one quote. Since wars begin in the mind of men, it is in the mind of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. This is the preamble of the UNESCO Charter from 1945.
Very good.
We're not inventing something new.
Thank you very much. Well, people, we want you to have a very peaceful evening, so it's about time to stop. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you to the panel. And you know what? I would like you to give a huge applause to Julie Allard, who's somewhere back there, who organized the whole thing. I think she deserves your applause. And Fleur, thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Hani. And Fleur, you have the last word. Thank you very much, Fleur, for all the work you've done too.
No, thank you. And thank you to everyone that's behind this who isn't seen and here to take the credit. In particular, Hani, who is hopefully still with us online. Thank you, Hani. We are continuing this conversation. We are continuing this launch. On the 3rd of October, we'll be going to New York, and we'd love it if you could join us. And if I could just share a couple of thoughts. That we were asked about innovation and what's real innovation. And what I'd like to highlight is our panel today. Hedda is the first cultural councillor for Sweden in Pretoria in South Africa. Tedros Mendes works for the Democratic Control of Armed Forces. I am part of a new gender and inclusive security cluster. We have a human security lens to the courses we do. Security and what it means is changing, and our perspective of it is changing. And it's by collaborating in these spaces and exchanging perspectives that I think we can look towards a peaceful society and build it together. And so I'm going to finish with the last #MediaArtsPeace. And thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Too short.